Hi everyone and welcome to Warmer. We're your hosts, Jack.
And Dan?
And today we're looking at unlimited power.
Yes.
Has the balance of power changed to the competitive players
Yeah.
or to the casuals?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic. I mean, a lot of 40k players feel the game has changed for the worse.
Yeah.
It's become a bit too dumbed down and maybe too focused on competitive play.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fair we'll ask about, does the tournament scene hold too much sway over 40k at the moment? And should casual players have a bigger say in how the game is played?
Yeah, because if you think about it, there's like the demographic of like, I guess like the player pyramid is kind of what you've described it as. It's kind of like the demographic is pointing more towards, there's a lot more players in like potentially like the casual / like collectors only kind of edition. The competitive scene is getting, I wouldn't say getting smaller and smaller. I just think there's more casuals tournaments upcoming.
Yeah, there's definitely changing. And I think, like you said, in terms of if you think about biggest to smallest in terms of players, you've got those that just collect and paint, just chill out watching podcasts like this one or whatever. Then you've got your casual players who play just a few games a year with their mates.
Perfectly, yeah.
Then you've got your casual tournament players, casual competitive like us.
Which I think is the bit that section you think is like, that's the bit that's growing out in my opinion.
I think so.
And then the cherry on the cake?
Is the very top, is the smallest segment, is what you might call the proper competitive players that regularly go to events.
Yeah, there's also like the very serious competition players, but
right at the tip of that, like you almost like your semi-pros and pros, like your Stephen Boxes from Vanguard Tactics. He makes a living from playing 40k.
It's his gig.
Yeah,
exactly. So so it's just like where is the balance of power switching to? Like, has the game changed because of the demographic, or is it because of the small people at the top?
Yeah, it feels a bit odd that if you're looking at it purely on numbers, that if we're right that small number at the peak, if you like, are able to dictate what happens to the rest of that pyramid.
Now it's weird because I've got some things to talk about where it's like I almost defend them because I think they're right, but then also at the same time I'm also against some things have changed because of what we've done. Let's be honest, what we've done in the casual kind of scene.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. This is not going to be a video bashing competitive players. I think it's us almost unraveling it between ourselves to where we think we stand.
Just like kind of like understand like the pros and cons. We do it for many things in our videos. Kind of highlight both areas to see. Well, look, let's everyone make an educated guess or decision on where we're at.
I mean, let's start then with that accusation about the game being dumbed down. Is that a reasonable accusation? They made changes that we didn't like to this edition.
Yeah, so 10th edition that's obviously out now. The big thing for me and a couple of friends that we've got is that the psychic phase was lost.
Yeah.
So an entire phase of the game was completely done. Now, what was the reason for that? I mean, it could be multiple different things. Was the game too busy as it was? Like, was there not enough time, and were you rushing your games? Was it because it was not used and only used for a couple of armies?
I mean, if you are like Tyranids or Thousand Suns, you had quite a chunky psychic phase, particularly Thousand Suns. Yeah, and that was gone. Grey Knights is another example.
Big one for that. And on the complete flip side, you had armies like Necrons that didn't have any psychic. So when it came to psychic phase, I remember during Ninth, I would just sit down and be like, mate, just tell me what to remove. Like mortal wounds, right? Sick, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
There goes all my lists because I've got.
It was a standing joke, Necron players, wasn't it? Like, oh, now it's a psychic phase. Oh, I'm done.
Yeah, it legitimately was there. Yeah,
but I know what you mean. And there's another one that you've put on here as well, which has irked a lot of players.
It certainly did. The loss of the war gear kind of stuff, and obviously purchasing like basically it wasn't it? It was purchasing war gear for different armies, so for different units. So I guess probably the biggest or best example of this is probably the Tau battle suits.
All right,
they had obviously a full range of different ways you could build them and pay for them, because each weapon had its different like cost to it. Yeah, so you could really like hone in on what took what and how much was what. But in this edition, they've removed all that. It made it so much that the points are incorporated with the entire unit. So you could have like a full squad of, I don't know, I'm going to make a random example. You could have a full squad of flamers that are going to be the same cost for a full squad of like melters. Yes. Now, back in an edition ago,
excuse me,
that's all right, those points could have been cheaper if you were playing the flamers, because they would have been able to balance them a bit better, because the flamers might not have been as good as in that edition, so that you could mix and match a bit bit easier in
I can understand why they did it, but it actually annoyed a lot of competitive players as well as for all of us that like to be able to have a perfect 2,000 point list. The number of times in 10th edition now where you have like 1990 or something, and you're like, well, like you said, in the old days, I could have spent 10 points on another heavy weapon.
Like a little shield drone, be like, like in a shield drone, I've got an extra save and such.
Yeah.
So that flexibility of getting to the nice round number is now missing. I was going to say something else, but it's completely slipped my mind on the war gear side of things.
I mean, while you think about that, I have heard rumours from someone who's usually a reliable source, but they told me that what they've heard from the design studio is that at least some of that flexibility is coming back in 11th edition.
Okay.
So yeah, they are listening to the player base. Player base doesn't like. It's one of those instances where casual and competitive are united.
Kind of came together. Yeah.
And so they have listened, and apparently it's coming back. How granular that is, if it's every weapon or just a few choices, I don't know.
Because if you think about it, like I know we're saying it's like dulled it down, and again we're both upset, but is this a decision that was made not because of the audience on who plays it, but because when we're doing those 3-month cycles of the balance changes, is that a considerable amount more work for them to balance, because they're not just looking at a unit, then looking at, great, here come orcs with like 6 different weapon profiles. God, I'm gonna have to do that's like 6 times the work, whereas it was just one unit. Maybe it's because of them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it makes the game easier to balance points wise from their perspective.
Yeah,
but I think it does make it does reduce a bit of flavour in your army, and it just leads to min-maxing. You could argue that that competitive players are always going to min-max anyway. There will be a loadout that's optimal for that unit.
And that's because they're going for points and they want to get the points. And I guess that their goal isn't to so much have like a very fun Warhammer game. They're going to win the game kind of thing. And fun to them is very subjective, because that might be fun for them.
Yeah, I think it's a different way to play, but they can still have chill and fun games against each other, like two kind of chess masters, going at it.
Yeah, very good.
It's a different vibe, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It is. Another point I was going to bring up about has the game been dulled down is you look at this year of chaos. Now that's probably going to upset a few audience people out there, because when I heard about the year of chaos, I heard and seen bells and whistles for chaos. Multiple units here, multiple upgrades there, and we've got to it. And realistically, I mean, what's it? Thousand Sons, Death Guard, and World Eater's got 1 extra model.
1 each revealed at Adepticon, and World Eaters have had another one since, which has come via a kill team, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I know you love to do that. I don't. Who doesn't? But yeah, I think so. But yeah, basically, I mean, they started with a big bang with Emperor's Children, loads of new sculpts, range refresh, beautiful box, and then the rest of Chaos got next to nothing.
So like, I'm just looking at the reason why I'm bringing this up for is because again, you look at the Emperor's Children, who've just been released, a good, fantastic box, right? Yeah. Some really good units in there, but is there enough for an army in its own? You look at Votann that came out a couple of years back. They got a good selection of units, but then nothing since, and there's just that limits how they play the game. So like you look back at when the Necron's got a full range refresh, we had got loads of models back in the day. That's been now removed, and maybe that's due to the facility to them to print out those models.
They still haven't got enough production to meet demand. So there's and that has partly caused a bottleneck, I think.
Yeah. So then when it comes to obviously like the game being dumbed down, it's like because like new armies cannot get as much as what we would get in the past.
They've half-arsed some of them, haven't they? Whether I don't think it's deliberate, but that's how it's ended up.
But like World Eaters, Votann are the ones examples, Emperor's Children's, they're fantastic releases. Let's not disagree with that, or disagree. But realistically, it's more just a case of, well, there's just not enough of them there to be classed a complex army, if that makes sense in my eyes.
I agree, and I think rules-wise is the same. This has been argued a great deal, so I won't dwell on it too long, but there's definitely been a streamlining of rules for factions and a reduction in faction flavour, so a lot of factions now share common rules and abilities. Most armies have got like an uppy-downy, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
It's like shared stuff. Like I mean, if you look at the example that we've got when our Codex came out, we had very similar detachment abilities from the Hypercrypt than what Grey Knights have.
Yes,
where we can basically teleport 3 units around the board. again, that element of being dulled down, I really seen that in 11th, where there was a lot of crossover of detachments.
Yes,
that's one example. Demons with their
army rule about about the
Shadow Chaos.
Shadow Chaos controlling the midboard and all that.
Yeah, and then we had that for the Canoptic Court, where that was slightly changed. So again, just similar rules, just different names. So I definitely felt in 11th, I'm getting ahead of myself. In 10th edition, Index specifically, I definitely seen that generalized vibe personally.
We touched on this briefly there, but how much of this is the fault of competitive players, really?
All of their fault. Everyone out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, realistically, it's directly not their fault. It's not even like the fault of the casuals. Again, we briefly mentioned it before. I don't think there's any blame to be held at one specific group of players. For me, it's just more of a collective. I would still argue that I would like to see where the data is pulled from. I know they mentioned that they use the BCP and tournament stats from there, but I see some changes that happen where I'm just like, well, that doesn't make too much sense.
Yes, like they use a much broader data set than just tournament data, so we can't say that balance updates are entirely down to the competitive scene. No. That's a very good point.
Yeah, mainly because just to give an example on that, because I hate when people just say like, oh, it's because of this. You look at the Necrons specifically because we're Necron players. For me, you look at for a very long time. There was the guys with the sword, the Necrons, not the Lich Guard, Triarch Praetorians. They were just so underplayed for so long, and they were missed out on like some of the special rules. And that detachment, in fact, was completely broken. Well, not broken, but completely crap for a long time. So if they were using the data, surely that would have been addressed sooner.
Yes, you would like to think so. I think there's a limit to what they do with. They seem to focus on the data on both ends of the extremes. Yeah. And if something's like really bad or really good, and then they will address it. If something's just bad or just good, then they don't tend to.
It just doesn't get touched. Which, again, not good use of data in my opinion.
No, it's not. No.
Personally,
it comes down to resources. Again, I think
multiple things. But anything for yourself on the competitive?
Yeah, I definitely don't think
anyone specifically to call out.
Well, I definitely don't think competitive players wanted to get rid of points for war gear. They like them, as we've already said. And I think it was more about GW trying to bring in new players. There was definitely, they call it simplified, not simple, but a better way of putting this is a dumbed down edition. And that's not to satisfy competitive players as much as probably bring in new players. There's an argument to say that it might have, some competitive players might have wanted some of these streamlining, but I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe it was more of a case of, since it was like 10th edition, this is like a soft reboot of Warhammer 40k, and we're bringing back the dulled down rules to then, as you say, in 11th, bring back those unique things like the war gear that we really enjoy to see.
That's a really good point, because if you look at, it's not like we can see a massive pattern, but that's what happened in 8th. So 7th was quite complex. 8th was basically like we just had like Index Hammer. 9th was super, super full of flavour, but very, very complex. Like there's probably a bit too much going on there, if being honest. And then 10th has gone like 8th. It's like the even numbers are the dumbed down ones. And then we'll see if it follows that pattern. 11th will be the one where they bring that flavour back.
Exactly.
We shall see.
A couple of points to make I was going to mention as well about like if it's like the fault, like, or whose fault it is. Again, I don't think it's anyone's fault, but like how many times, and everyone out there, please let us know, but how many times have you went to go make a list and you've Googled the list, and the result that comes up is from a tournament player who's read the rules, played the game, refined the list to put it on there, and then everyone's like, "Well, that's meta. I'm gonna build my list to accompany those meta lists." I know we've mentioned before, don't meta chase, but when you look on lists online, that's just what's naturally going to happen.
Yeah, it does. There's a lot of videos as well. Same thing.
And do I blame those competitive players from finding loopholes? No. Do I blame those new people who are coming into the hobby who don't know how to build a list and are just using what's available? No. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like it can't be anyone's fault in the nicest way possible, except a couple of people. No, but like I say, it's just like I say. I don't think it's no one's fault. It's just the game we play is complex. There's lots of things to think about in the game and out the game to help make those decisions. Is it Games Workshop's fault? Again, I don't want to say no, but like,
I mean, Games Workshop has to, it doesn't have to, but the cycle it's on, it has to put an edition out. It has to try and find a way to balance it. Largely, not just for the competitive players, but for all of us.
Yeah.
So there is that element to it. What about? It might not be the fault of the competitive players, but is this edition too focused on competitive play?
It's, I don't know. My thoughts are like, again, it's kind of like back and forth from it.
Yeah.
I've got written down here.
Sorry.
Right, you're all right. Cough's getting worse.
I know.
It's getting worse. I've written down here, I think it's got better as more and more clubs have been busy popping up in my mind. So like, as we approach that, what's the word I'm looking for? Like Wildlings, for example.
Yes.
I didn't know that existed until I basically met you. And then since then, once I've found this one, so many more have either popped up or I'm just in that zone now where I'm seeing more and more being talked around. And
there's definitely more events and more people interested in going to events. It's definitely grown.
And it's a weird one because obviously we're in this kind of like, I would say quite a casual kind of competitive scene with the Wildlings and such. But I'm seeing more and more competitive things pop up.
Yeah.
But they're still so casual, these competitive ones that are coming up.
We're lucky where we live is a very nice vibe. I was talking to a lad I know that I met at Rally Point, Tommy, and he lives on the South Coast, and he was going to an event. I think it was this weekend when we were recording, and he was like, "There's like 8 of the top 20 UK players here because the South Coast has got obviously that's where a lot more of the competitive scene is down there. So they obviously play each other all the time. You get better, etc. We've got a much not saying our player base is rubbish, but we've got a much more chilled vibe here, which is nice.
And I think that's what the vibe that I'm happy I've came into as well. Like competitive, it's fun to play and like to make like a big filthy list, but it's not what I'm all about. It's just like I like to play the game, enjoy the hobby. Relax.
Oh yeah.
Not like stress over points and that.
I do think that GW has kind of wanted to copy the sort of Magic the Gathering, the MTG kind of business model.
Yeah.
Where you have competitive scene and that massively influences the casual scene. Yeah. And then you get meta chasing and you need this card because it's a new hotness and all that kind of stuff.
Get the Black Lotus.
Yes.
Yes. I think that's like the most expensive Magic the Gathering card out there. It's crazy. It's crazy good. But it's just a card. They should have nerfed it. But to be fair, back to the Gathering, it's hard because think about it, they ban a lot of cards that come out, and I really hope Games Workshop don't take that approach to be like, oh, that model's really good, right? Well, instead of reducing the points, it's gone. It's Legends.
Yeah,
it's too good. It's to Legends.
I don't think so. There's a lot of rumors flying around at the moment about the relationship between GW and WTC. I was thinking about like the organization that organizes a lot of tournaments, which GW puts its name to some of them, like I think the LVO is a GW approved one. There's a few others, but there is some talk about GW kind of bringing more of that back in house and organising their own events. Hopefully they've learned some lessons from Warhammer Fest.
I was going to say I've been enjoying local tournaments. Now, I mean, those ones will be good because I did enjoy my time.
Local tournaments will stay the same. I think it'd be more of your majors and super majors. More of those might come under the GW umbrella, and that would probably actually do the opposite because they're unlikely to ban their own product. There is tournaments that have publicly stated they are banning the Mordaka detachment for orcs.
Yes, they have.
I don't think you would get that under GW.
And they've done that with Votann before as well in the past. That's happened, so it's been done before. So I think you're right. I don't think they'd ban their own models because that's them admitting themselves that they've done goofed. They don't like doing that. No.
This is a massive aside, and it might be worth a video in its own right in the future. But what's concerned me was learning. I mean, it's a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but let's assume it's true. But if GW ends up running all the majors and super majors, or most of them, what does that mean for ChinaCast proxies and 3D prints? Because true. If you go to an official GW event, you can't take them.
I've heard they crush them in front of you whenever they find them. They have like sniffer dogs on the as you walk
sniffing out
that
resin.
Yeah. What's that? Empty your bag. No.
And that would be a bigger shake up to the competitive scene because we're I was going to say guilty, but guilty is the wrong word. But we do that like we've talked about many times.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's a big expensive. and you're not sure whether you're going to run it in the long term or something.
I've mentioned it before with the Olympic Miniatures who run tournaments around ours, so check them out if you haven't already. But those guys, really good in terms of the rules. They're quite flexible to be like, well, look, if your army's not painted, don't worry, no -10. And I find that so welcoming for me, at least anyways, because I've got my Necrons done, I've got my Knights done, but I want to take my Tyranids out for a spin. And that element of being able to allow me to bring them unpainted is just so much nicer and better.
But equally, I mean, while we have seen examples of meta chasing, I remember going to, was it a Votann army? I can't remember, where we saw it was literally being airbrushed 3 colours. 3D printed airbrushed just 3 lines of colour to meet the standard for tournaments.
And that's when Votann just came out. They were looking just to basically jump in on some points.
Just meta chase,
Yeah, which... Sure, if that's how you want to play, sure.
I can kind of understand anything that kind of prevents that a little bit, but if GW tries to stop competitive players taking any 3D prints, that's going to cause problems.
Yes.
But keep an eye on that. I've died as usual. I've wandered off.
That's good talk.
I mean, in terms, I think the game itself is designed for competitive play. The card decks, the regular balance updates, etc. It does feel like we're all being pushed into that direction.
Yes, yeah.
But having said that, the third mission deck that's coming out, we talked about this on the Adepticon reveals.
Yes.
That has
a catch-up mechanic.
Yeah, well, it has a catch-up mechanic, but it also has that asymmetric war.
Oh, of course, yeah, the different kind of play style.
Yes, so that which looks like it's designed for casual.
Yeah.
And I think there is a growing groundswell of
ask
demand, growing ask exactly from the casual player base for something like that. They want something that is easy to pick up.
Thematic, more fun, like, my list is here to kind of go and kill. It's like, all right, cool, you'll be the one to attack and the other guy will be the one to defend. Like,
it's nice and thematic, your guard defending an outpost against my massive horde of Tyranids or something.
Exactly.
Can you hold out for 5 turns?
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's just, it draws those people in to be like, all right, cool, you want to play 40k? Here's the deck. Yeah. You can only play this way or no way. And it's like, oh, well, give me more flexibility. Like, this is more... You're telling me to play competitive, but I'm playing in a casual scene.
A lot of players just don't have the bandwidth to keep up with all the changes and for the complexity of the mission deck. If you can give them a simpler way to play, you will keep more of them in the game. Which is what GW wants at the end of the day. Yeah. So I do think it's swung too far towards competitive. It feels like it might be. It's too early to say just from one hint of a mission deck.
Yeah.
But it might be that the pendulum's coming back a little bit.
It's very
and
true.
It needs to, I think. I do think it needs to.
Exactly.
I mean, there are Crusade books for narrative players, and at the end of the day, be the change that you want to be in the world. Like, if you don't like playing with the mission deck, homebrew your own missions.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously there's like the Crusade as well.
Yeah, you can play the Crusade books as well. Yeah,
again, kind of people like take their own spin on that and make their own story, and that kind of helps people get really engaged in kind of their units and such.
Yeah, some people really like that kind of side of things, and so I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
What about the tournament scene holding too much sway over 40k? I mean, you were saying like I think we both agree it probably does at the moment.
Yeah, because that's where, like, I think the best way of putting this is, because again, I'm saying yes, it's a confident yes, because that is rich data. It is data that is captured by tournament organizers and held, I guess, securely by BCP, which is obviously Warhammer's integrating themselves a lot more into it now.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen, you can obviously link up your Warhammer account.
Yeah, to the BCP app. Yeah,
exactly. So they are definitely having that rich data, whereas everything else from those casual tournaments might not be captured in the most secure way. So how can they trust the data? Probably can't. It's all hearsay. So I think that's why I'm quite a confident yes that tournament scenes do sway 40k.
I think so. I think the data definitely drives it a lot, and I think GW definitely encourages meta chasing. As we just made a video about pump and dump.
They definitely do.
We've gone from Codex Creep to a much faster cycle, but go and watch that if you're interested in it.
Yeah.
And I do think GW actually has relationships. GW has relations. GW has relationships with a lot of those top players because they're seeing them all the time.
Yeah,
these people are.
You invite them down.
Yeah, they're always at Warhammer World. They are effectively on the GW payroll because they get given free stuff to promote. So there is that kind of symbiotic relationship between the two, where GW wants to keep these people on side because these people are influencers that will influence us to buy more product. So there's definitely that element, that kind of matey element of it as well, where if you and me have actually got a relationship, I'm more inclined to listen to you.
Yeah, scratch your back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. It's definitely, and the thing is that's probably based off. We see that in every single place outside of
all walks of life. All walks of life. Yeah.
So it's clearly there, and it's clearly there to stay. They can deny it all they want, but I think we'll all suspect it.
Yeah, and I do think that kind of balance, the balance, the regular balance, was demanded by was demanded mainly by the competitive players, because even in 9th we were going sometimes almost a year or vast chunks of a year before an army was reined in if it was a bit good.
Yeah,
and that's changed into this 3-month cycle. I think we appreciate it, but we're quite deep into the hobby.
Well, I think we are.
Yeah, if you are not that deep into the hobby, it becomes a headache. And I know people that's dropped out because it's just too much time management.
Yeah,
it was like homework before. If you were play a game a month, you would have to or a game every couple of months, you would have to spend an hour or two relearning what's changed.
Yeah,
I've got to do my army list again because the points have changed, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very true. On the flip side then, I mean, should casual players have a bigger say in the game itself? What about you?
I think this boils down to buying power. So if we look nakedly at that pyramid we're talking about, the casual players, there are more of them.
Yeah.
But the tournament players spend a lot more money per head than the casual players.
Right.
So a casual player is probably likely to, let's assume they've got 2 armies, right? They maybe got 5,000 points or 6,000 points between them. Once they're built, they're built.
Yeah.
A tournament player is a competitive player, or someone like us that's got one foot in both camps, is constantly buying more.
That's true.
So they are in terms of buying power, they're probably spending as much as the casuals, if not more.
It's good.
We need to understand the actual, the size of the demographics.
Yeah.
And I think the buying power of the tournament people is quite high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point. To be fair, I was thinking more like, I'm on the side of no in a way, and I'm happy for everyone to come at me in the comments. Don't get me wrong, but I've got some good reasons, justifications for it.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to be swayed otherwise. But like I say, I'm in the nice way possible on the no side of things, where casual players shouldn't really have a say to a degree. I don't want to just say flat out no, mainly because we've talked about it in the past before. But here's a little example: you're a Drukhari player. Who else plays Drukhari? Right? Good players is what you see, and you've talked about it in the past before, and we joke about it where you bring down the demographic for
massively. I'm bringing the win rate down,
Yeah. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing in the terms of trying to balance the game? Because let's say you didn't play, right? And then those top players who were playing Drukhari, their win rates are sky high.
Yes.
They're going to nerf them more.
Yes.
So in this circumstance, it's yes, that makes sense. We need to buff. We need to, if it was just you playing it, we need to buff them more.
Yeah.
But then when you get into the very first starting armies like Space Marines and such, there are so many guys out there. Where I got into Necrons as one of my first armies, and I would have dragged down that win rate so much. I was playing the metas lists. I just didn't know how to pilot them. And I was bringing down that thing. So, I
still am.
Yeah. So, I guess now that I've said it aloud, is it more of a balance thing? Should we take both ends and meet in the middle? Because we mentioned it briefly before that some stuff in the middle is being missed, like the trial.
Oh yeah, totally.
Now that I've said it out loud, I'm like, oh, actually, hold on. Am I convincing myself to say it's an in between job?
No, I think you're right. I think there's still a high churn rate in casual players, which it indicates to me that they feel voiceless or powerless because they're not getting the experience that they want out of the game.
Yeah,
and if that is true, then GW needs to address that. And that is basically giving them more say, which is sitting down and saying, right, well, what would keep you guys happy?
Yeah.
And my wish list here is 3 things. It's Index Hammer, so that you get it at the beginning of the edition, you play your index, and it's free.
Yes, I do like that.
There's an open war deck, so where it's basically simplified missions. It's nice and easy, not too much of a head strain. And then number 3 is locked rules and points, so that you play to the rule book and the points that come out at the beginning of the edition, and you don't have to worry about. It won't be perfectly balanced. You have to sort that out between yourselves, but it avoids that homework issue I was talking about earlier, where if you only play 10 games a year, you know that you can, in January, the list you played in January, you can play in March. And the rules will be the same, the points will be the same.
Yeah, that's true. That is a good point. I like the open war deck as well idea.
They had it in 8th, and I think it was 8th. To tell me if I'm wrong again, but I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah. It's just again that element, because sometimes you do just want one of them games to be like, I just want to kill things. I just want to just smash together. Let's see what we can do. Let's see who comes out on top. Forget points. Who's left standing.
I think that as we say, we don't know yet, but that asymmetric war version of in the mission decks feels like little steps towards that. But I don't think it's going far enough.
Yeah, I don't think they'll dive.
It's not addressing all the other stuff that we like in terms of the updates and how then the rules changes and all that.
Exactly. One of my wish lists I was going to ask as well about like kind of like the casual players and how they can maybe help influence it without, again, because the whole point I made before around getting the data and capturing the data. Well, this is hinted, or an element of taken away is, remember when 10th came out and we had the Leviathan versus the Space Marine? The
Ninja versus
It was like you could like scan the app and then go like vote online to see what was working really well.
Yeah, you played a game and then inputted your results, and I think the Tyranids won, didn't they?
They certainly did. Yeah, and then that dictated what happened in the lore, which was really nice to see. So do we need something like that to kind of come back, where people can go up and vote? What are the worst looking units? What are the underrated units? Like a I don't know, a quarterly
survey? Even an annual survey or something like that. Or I mean, the alternative is like we've just been talking about all these different apps, but GW, as the size of the company it is, should have apps where you can upload. It's part of its app. You should be able to upload your scores. And they should be able to, and your army list, so they can see it. So they're not just reliant on BCP data from competitive scene. They're looking at the casual scene.
And even if they didn't use it like wholeheartedly, but it's like an indicator, because obviously that potentially could be abused, yada yada. But
you're going to get different skill levels and all. There's all sorts going on.
Exactly. But it's still at least some data where they can gather and get it, and it's going to be useful for them, because again, those casual players, if you think about it, those casual players will be buying those units that aren't meta, because maybe they're just new to the hobby and they're just trying
more rule of cool type stuff.
Exactly. So they're the ones who are actually playing with the units, and then they could be like, I played it, but I just didn't feel any impact on it, and I wouldn't buy it again because it was bad. And then Games Workshop could be like, oh, you wouldn't buy it again? Well, let me increase that. Let me increase the betterness of that unit, and then you might buy
give it a nice little buff or points drop or something.
Exactly. So something like that is what I was thinking for that to help.
There is ways. I hadn't thought about it like that, but you're right. There's ways that the data they could use. They could try and aggregate more data to help them make better decisions. I'm just not sure that they're interested. That's what this I think kind of spoiled. Like that's what kind of prompted this, was that they're interested in balancing competitive play, and the rest of us kind of come along with the backwash of that.
It's we just trailed along as a side note, but we're the biggest audience.
We are, and I mean, if it depends on your approach to the game. Like for us, who play relatively regularly, I'm probably getting a good 50 games a year. It's averaging about a game a week probably. That that balance keeps it fresh, keeps it balanced. This is the most balanced edition for that in that respect that we've ever had, I think. And until they do things like more DACA and then just completely upend the like flip the script or whatever.
Absolutely, no, it's definitely the most. But we've mentioned it before, but it's definitely the most balanced edition. I think, so
there are pros and cons to this, but I guess if I was going to sum up my position, I think it would be that I do think competitive players do have a disproportionate say in how the game is designed. But perhaps that's not the worst thing in the world.
I think based off data, I think you're right. It's for me, it is definitely the competitive play. Should again the casual players have a say? I'm almost now convinced to say yes, but it's got to be done in the right way. Because again, they can't just upload random stats, but they've also got to get the correct data. But
no disrespect to kids, but like you're going to get some incredibly wild swings in games between like 2 15-year-olds or something.
Oh, exactly.
It's not going to help.
No.
But I think so. I think that was an interesting chat. I'm still. It's one of those ones where conclusively you can't say this is how it should be.
And that's kind of why we make these videos again, because it's like, look, we can like bring in, like gather some data and such, and we do like to hear what everyone else says out there. So please comment your thoughts on it as well, because we can have our opinions and thoughts, but there's only so much stuff what we can find out about this, and there might be something out there that might say, oh well, look at this. This is how we know they collect data.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'd never considered that before. So it's always good.
I think a few of the things I'd like to hear from you guys is if you're a casual player, tell us your perspective. If you're a competitive player, tell us your perspective. If you play other game systems that have better ways of addressing this, to let us know as well. Yeah. Because I don't have time to play any other games.
Exactly.
But on that note, I think say a few thank yous and wrap it up.
Of course, again, massive thank you to our Patreons and YouTube members out there. Massive help, massive support. Enjoy your weekly members videos that we release only for you guys. You can check them out. We release them. I try and just get them done as and when. I think we're going to be aiming for at least Saturday, so check those out if you're interested.
Yes, and if you want to come and join us, links are in the description. We'd really appreciate your support. If you can't, then just keep liking and subscribing, and come and join our Discord. It's free.
Yep, please.
We've got a great Discord community, so come on over and join us.
Definitely.
But otherwise, thank you very much, and we'll be back soon with another video.
Thank you.